Good morning, guys. Today we're looking at the paragraph from Here Boy, paragraph number 2. I've put it on the page so you don't really need your reader unless you want to get it. And we actually highlighted and made a lot of annotations yesterday that has to do with this, so this will be good. We're discussing the difference of an observation, which is what you see. We've used that word a lot. What do you observe? I know not our last unit, but the unit before. No, observing nature was our last unit. And then also characters revealing themselves through their actions and their words, so what we observe people doing. So this word should not be too new to us, but observation is what we see. Interpretation is when we make meaning of what we see. Or speaking. I know a lot of you guys are familiar with interpreters for language. So like if you speak a language other than English, you may have an interpreter, excuse me, who comes to translate. So the interpreter is making meaning of maybe Spanish and translating it into English. So we're kind of talking about that today. And we're talking about it in reference to point of view. So yesterday in small groups, we talked about how the story was told from Opal's point of view, the little girl, and it was told in first person. So the story is told through her eyes. So we see through the words what she observed. Okay? She's telling us, this is what I saw, this is what I observed happening. Then she interpreted what she saw. In my small group in reading yesterday, we had some fun conversation about how that interpretation might have been different if the story was told from the point of view of the store manager. I don't think he would have interpreted that cute little fun, happy, excited dog the same way that Opal did. Or if the story was told from the dog's point of view, he would have also had a totally different interpretation. Now, the observations, what they saw, should not have changed. Observations are more like a factual thing. It's what I'm actually seeing happening. But my interpretation of what that means can be different than yours. So it's almost like comparing facts and opinions. So observations are a little bit more like facts. Interpretations, let me move my little chart down, are a little bit more like opinions. Okay, so in paragraph 2, I've pulled out some observations, and these are some things I think we highlighted as well. The first one we had is the dog came running around the corner. So here that is. The dog came running around the corner. That was what Opal saw. Okay, her interpretation was he was a big dog. And you notice the interpretation comes next. This is kind of like elaboration on our race rubric. He was a big dog and ugly, and he looked like he was having a real good time. Okay, so that is the interpretation that she had when she saw the dog coming around the corner. Again, if the store manager was writing this paragraph, he would have said, and then the dog came around the corner. He might have stuck with the interpretation he was a big dog and he was ugly. I'm not so sure he would have said he was having a real good time. He probably would have said he was destroying my store or something like that. The next one was his tongue was hanging out. He was wagging his tail. He skidded to a stop. And if you notice, that's the next one in our our paragraph. When Opal saw him do that, her interpretation of that was, he smiled right at me, and smiling. So that idea that the dog was smiling. I don't see the "and smiling" part. Oh, I guess it's just this part. Okay, so the idea that the dog is smiling. That's her interpretation. Then we have The dog went running over to the manager, wagging his tail. Oh my goodness, this is not just paragraph 2. I'm sorry, guys. This was also from the other paragraph on the next page. I didn't put it on here. I failed. The dog went running over to the manager. If you look, that's paragraph 4. This is the one where we kind of had a good giggle. And it says, but if you look at your book that I told you didn't need, it says, he ran over to the manager, wagging his tail. That was the very first sentence of paragraph 4. And then right next to that, we see her interpretation. You could tell all he wanted to do was get face to face with the manager and thank him for the good time he was having in the produce department. Okay, and I know yesterday, I don't know if you guys talked to Ms. Corbin about this, but we talked about how, again, the manager's interpretation of the dog doing this probably was not the same as Opal. He's laying on the floor and he actually starts crying, right? Which is the next observation. Lying there on the floor, right in front of everybody, the manager started to cry. Her interpretation was the manager must have been having a bad day if he's crying. And then last but not least, from paragraph 4, we have the dog licked his face. And the interpretation Opal had of that was he leaned over him really concerned. Okay, he's concerned. So the idea of observations and interpretations help us to understand the speaker's, the narrator's point of view and how they see things. And then it's a fun conversation to have about how that interpretation might have switched had it been told from the point of view of someone else. So when we're thinking about authors and when they're writing and the point of view they choose to write from, because this author could have very well written the same part of the story from the point of view of the store manager. But we have to wonder sometimes, why did he choose to tell it through Opal's eyes? Why didn't he tell it through the store manager's eyes? And my thoughts would be because we know that this is where Opal meets Winn-Dixie. Opal chooses to take Winn-Dixie home because she just said, he's my dog, even though she's telling a story. So this is her meeting Winn-Dixie. And so they wanted to tell it from Opal's point of view to help us understand why she might step in and say, he's mine. Where if we told it from the manager's point of view, we would have never understood Opal's thoughts and feelings. So going into today's class, we're going to be doing something a little similar to this. So have your thinking caps on and be thinking about how observations lead to interpretations and how the interpretation matters depending on whose point of view we're learning from. We'll see you guys in just a little bit.